this gangster that behind the scenes is that him? Or is that people
Shout
around?
out to Wendy Williams.
This is one of the most outrageous things I have heard in a long, long time.
In a case that has been filled with...
And looks at Wendy and says, you know, you had a great career. Your career is over. It is never coming back. You're done. Why would a...
The fallout between Sharina Hudson and Kevin Hunter hit the internet like a flash fire. Not because people were shocked it happened, but because of when it happened. The timing was so cold, so precise, it almost felt like Sharina had been waiting with her bags packed, watching the clock tick down on Kevin's financial freefall. One moment, the courts handed a major win to Wendy Williams, one that essentially froze Kevin's pipeline and exposed just how deeply he depended on her money. And the next moment, Sharina was reportedly out the door, moving like someone who'd finally realized the lifestyle she'd been promised wasn't just cracking, it was collapsing in real time. And let's be honest, the streets weren't surprised. The whole situation had been simmering for years, ever since the world found out about Sharina, the affair, the baby, the new life built outside Wendy's marriage, an entire second family that was maintained on the same empire Wendy had built with media, sweat, and decades of hustle. But the second that empire stopped funding Kevin's world, suddenly that family didn't look so secure anymore. What made the situation even more wild was the silence Sharina kept. She never came forward with the loud clapbacks, the big emotional displays, or the dramatic online moments people expected. Instead, she played it quiet, observing the way Kevin spiraled when Wendy's finances were placed under court protection and that alimony stream dried up completely.
You know, the banks froze everything up. Yeah. He was not in a position to pay $10,000 a month.
For years, people joked that Kevin was living like the retired CEO of someone else's success, cruising off Wendy's name while pretending he was the backbone. But when reality hit, it hit like a steel beam. The man went from living high to allegedly struggling to keep up with basic bills, court fees, and the costs of maintaining the lifestyle he insisted he deserved. And once that happened, Sharina reportedly began moving with distance, emotionally, then physically, because what she signed up for was stability, not stress, and Kevin could no longer deliver. That shift turned into pressure. That pressure turned into resentment, and that resentment boiled over into the final moment. Sharina walking out just 1 hour after Wendy's court win was announced. People online immediately knew what time it was. The jokes started flying, the memes were nonstop, and the comment sections lit up with people saying things like, "She stayed for the lifestyle, not the love," or "Once the money left, so did she." But beneath the jokes was a real conversation about how long someone like Sharina could realistically stick around once the financial perks disappeared. Kevin had built this entire narrative of being the provider, the man in control, the strategist who made things move. Yet here he was, exposed. No network deals, no major income, no big projects, just a mountain of expenses and a reputation that made it hard for anybody to want to work with him publicly. And Sharina, who had been there through the highs, suddenly had to face the lows, and clearly wasn't trying to go down with the ship. So when Wendy walked out of court with a win and Kevin walked home with nothing but overdue bills and stress, Sharina reportedly took one look at the situation, packed up what was hers, and dipped without hesitation. It was the kind of twist that felt inevitable, but still hit like a plot twist nobody could ignore. The deeper the details got, the clearer it became that Kevin had been living in a fantasy ever since leaving Wendy's world. To the outside viewer, he projected confidence, like a man who believed his next big deal was always just around the corner. But behind closed doors, insiders alleged there were debts piling, projects stalling, and business plans that never made it past the brainstorming phase. Kevin had always operated under the belief that he could rebuild his own empire, that he didn't need the woman who built the first one. Yet every time he tried to launch something new, the industry seemed to respond with silence. Doors that once opened because Wendy's name was attached no longer cracked. People who once owed him favors suddenly had amnesia. The entertainment game moved on without him. And while he was still trying to be the boss of his own narrative, he was really a man scrambling to pay for a lifestyle that had been funded entirely by someone who was now legally protected from his reach. Sharina, on the other hand, was living in reality.
And I can't figure out, why is there a gag order in this case? That Wendy can't talk about her circumstances? Why is the judge doing it?
That aside,
there is something
that's even
way.
She had watched the shift happen slowly, from Kevin flexing like a king to Kevin downplaying overdue notices. She reportedly saw how many corners he was cutting, how many promises he was making that didn't match the bank accounts, and how much pressure he was under now that Wendy's financial guardianship blocked the payments he depended on. The moment those alimony checks disappeared, their household went from loft-level comfort to uncertainty. And while Kevin tried to hide it, a lifestyle built on image always cracks first. Sharina noticed she wasn't blind, and she wasn't built to be the ride or die through a collapse she never signed up for. This wasn't the man who once showed up dripping in confidence and security. This was someone cornered, frustrated, and snapping under the weight of bills that used to be effortless to pay. And that's where the tension allegedly got ugly. Not in screaming matches or dramatic fights, but in quiet resentments. Sharina feeling trapped in someone else's downfall. Kevin feeling abandoned by the very person he claimed he protected. His pride was hit hard, because nothing bruises ego faster than realizing the loyalty you boasted about was actually tied to wealth, not commitment. When Wendy's court victory became public and reports circulated that Kevin's income had effectively evaporated, Sharina took stock of her situation. She had a child to think about, a future to build, and the awareness that staying connected to Kevin meant syncing with him financially. That 1 hour timing wasn't accidental, it was symbolic. The moment the judge finalized Wendy's protection, Sharina finalized her exit. Online, people debated whether she was wrong or simply practical, but the majority said the same thing. Kevin built this bed, and now he had to lie in it, alone. And Sharina, she simply walked away before the collapse turned into rubble. As the story gained traction, more behind-the-scenes whispers started surfacing about just how chaotic Kevin's financial situation had become. There were claims of unpaid business expenses, late payments on his home, and even pressure from lenders who allegedly wanted their money back. Some insiders said Kevin was juggling more than he could carry, pretending to maintain stability while scrambling behind the scenes to keep up appearances. The man who once walked around with the confidence of someone managing one of the biggest talk show empires was now allegedly negotiating payment plans and dodging overdue notifications. And the worst part for Kevin? People were watching. Industry folks who once feared him were now amused. The fall from power was public, humiliating, and relentless. Sharina reportedly knew the full truth long before the story hit the internet. She saw the panic behind Kevin's attempts to downplay the situation. She witnessed the frustration that bubbled anytime someone mentioned Wendy's case. The pressure was suffocating their household. Money was always a conversation. How much was left? What bills needed priority? What luxuries they could no longer afford? Kevin was living in survival mode, but trying to act like a general in control. That contradiction wore the relationship down. Sharina wasn't arguing, she was withdrawing. When someone emotionally checks out before physically leaving, the silence becomes louder than any shouting match.
A good job of protecting my mom. As long as she has people around who are yes people, I know that she's not getting the help that she needs or getting better.
That's what friends close to the situation described, a quiet unraveling. But it wasn't just the money that pushed Sharina out the door. It was the realization that Kevin had never really prepared to stand on his own. Everything he had, everything he flaunted, everything he used to attract her in the first place came from Wendy's grind. And once that source was cut off, Sharina saw exactly what Kevin could provide without it. The lifestyle, the security, the illusion of a stable future. It vanished. Meanwhile, the public sympathy wasn't on Kevin's side. People who remembered the messy timeline of his exit from Wendy's marriage didn't feel bad now that the empire he benefited from slipped through his hands. Many said it was karma. Others said it was inevitable. Either way, Sharina wasn't about to let herself become collateral damage in someone else's downfall. So when she left that day, reportedly an hour after the court decision, it wasn't impulsive. It was the final step in a process she had already emotionally completed. Her exit was clean, quiet, and strategic. She didn't blast Kevin online. She didn't cry for sympathy. She just moved on, which made the blow to Kevin's pride even heavier, because losing someone to love hurts. But losing someone because they no longer believe you can financially lead, that hits a different nerve, and the internet wasted no time dragging him for it, turning his downfall into a cautionary tale about arrogance, infidelity, and the reality that karma has no expiration date. Kevin's reaction to Sharina leaving didn't make waves publicly, but insiders described it as a mix of shock, anger, and embarrassment. He had always been the one who controlled the narrative, at least in his mind. But this time, he wasn't the one calling the shots. He wasn't choosing the timing, the optics, or the storyline. Sharina walking away immediately after Wendy's court win created an image Kevin couldn't escape. A man left behind because he could no longer financially sustain the life he bragged about. And for someone whose identity was built on dominance, that cut deep. The narrative flipped completely. Instead of Kevin being the one moving on from Wendy, he became the one being abandoned because he lost access to her wealth. After Sharina separated herself, Kevin reportedly tried to regain momentum in his business ventures. But rebuilding a reputation that was tied to scandal, public infidelity, and financial dependence wasn't easy. Industry insiders allegedly didn't want to collaborate, not because they disliked him personally, but because associating with him offered no benefit. He wasn't connected to a major network anymore. He didn't have access to Wendy's platform, and the public's interest in him was tied entirely to controversy, not creativity. That's a tough place to rebuild from, especially when bills are due and lenders want answers. Meanwhile, Sharina was focused on stabilizing her own life, distancing herself from the chaos that had overshadowed the past several years. People online continued dissecting their breakup, pointing out how Kevin had gambled his entire life on a lifestyle he assumed was permanent. He walked out of a long marriage expecting that he could recreate success with someone else, not realizing he had severely underestimated Wendy's ability to cut him off when pushed too far. Wendy's victory in court wasn't just financial, it was symbolic. It proved she had taken control back, that she was no longer the passive supporter who tolerated disrespect behind closed doors. And the fact that Sharina dipped the same hour amplified the message. Kevin's era of control was officially over. Public commentary shifted into a deeper conversation about accountability. Some viewers highlighted how quick Kevin had been to flaunt his new life while Wendy was struggling physically and emotionally. Others mentioned how Sharina wasn't innocent either, but that walking away now didn't erase the years she benefited from Wendy's labor. But the most common sentiment was simple. The universe doesn't let disrespect slide forever. Eventually, the bill comes due. And for Kevin, it came in the form of financial collapse, abandoned relationships, and a reputation he couldn't salvage. Sharina's exit wasn't an attack, it was a response, a survival move, a recognition that she needed to detach before his downfall pulled her under too. And from that point on, their lives took completely different paths, both shaped by a single court ruling that shifted everything. While Kevin struggled to regain stability, Wendy's legal victory sparked renewed support from the public. Fans celebrated not just the court win, but the symbolic weight behind it. This wasn't just about money. This was about reclaiming autonomy after years of being controlled, disrespected, and overshadowed. Wendy's journey was far from easy. Between health struggles, financial guardianship, and public scrutiny, she had been fighting battles few people truly understood. But this court win gave her breathing room. It put a legal wall between her and the man who once drained her emotionally and financially. And ironically, that same wall is what triggered the collapse of Kevin's entire world. The poetic justice wasn't subtle, it was loud. Sharina stepping away added another layer to the narrative. It proved that Kevin had lost not only access to Wendy's finances, but also the illusion of support he thought he had secured with his new life. His sense of stability had been built on a foundation he didn't own. And once that foundation was gone, everything began to crumble. The separation between him and Sharina became a blunt reminder that relationships rooted in financial comfort rarely survive when the comfort disappears. Sharina was never going to play the role Wendy played for decades, working nonstop, sacrificing, building, supporting. Sharina wanted the finished product, not the grind required to create it. And when the finished product evaporated, so did her commitment. Meanwhile, Kevin's situation became a social commentary on the consequences of entitlement. Throughout his marriage to Wendy, he operated like a man untouchable, confident that he could step outside the relationship, build a second family, and maintain both worlds without repercussions. But the same confidence that made him reckless became the same flaw that led to his downfall. He overlooked the one thing Wendy had that he never could recreate, a public legacy built on authenticity. Wendy could survive a collapse because she built everything herself. Kevin couldn't survive the loss of Wendy's support because he built nothing without her. And as all of this unfolded, Sharina's choice was viewed less as betrayal and more as inevitability. She simply chose her future over someone else's past mistakes. She refused to become financially responsible for a man whose previous lifestyle had made promises he couldn't keep. And her decision exposed a truth Kevin wasn't ready to face. Without Wendy, he wasn't the provider. He was the dependent. Without Wendy's money, he wasn't the mastermind. He was the beneficiary of her labor. And now, without Sharina, he was isolated in a reality he never thought he'd have to face alone. By the time the situation stabilized, the storyline had cemented itself in public consciousness as one of the most dramatic reversals in celebrity relationship history. Kevin, once seen as the dominant force behind Wendy's empire, had fallen into financial chaos. Sharina, once positioned as his fresh start, had walked away without hesitation. And Wendy, once framed as the woman left behind, stood victorious. Not because she sought revenge, but because she reclaimed what was hers. The symmetry was undeniable. The woman who had been publicly humiliated became the one protected by the courts. The man who built a second life at her expense became the one left standing in the ruins of his own choices. And the woman who helped dismantle a marriage became the one who abandoned the man she once risked everything for. The real takeaway wasn't the breakup itself. It was the lessons embedded in the collapse. Actions have consequences. Stability built on someone else's foundation is always temporary, and disrespect has a way of circling back when least expected. Kevin believed he could live without Wendy's support, but once her financial guardianship sealed off the revenue he depended on, he was forced to confront a truth he spent years ignoring. He was never the empire. Wendy was, and without her, his empire vanished. Sharina's departure only highlighted what had been true the entire time. Kevin's power was borrowed, and once the lender took it back, he had nothing left to offer. Sharina moving on wasn't malicious, it was survival. She chose her child, her peace, and her stability over a sinking ship. And whether people like her or not, the timing told the whole story. She wasn't interested in holding on to a man who couldn't hold on to the lifestyle he promised. And Kevin? He was forced to live with the consequences of every bridge he burned and every decision he thought he'd never pay for. His fall became a cultural cautionary tale, a reminder that betrayal might feel powerful in the moment, but karma always has the final word. As the internet continues dissecting every angle of this saga, one thing stays clear. Wendy's resilience reshaped the narrative. Her legal win didn't just free her financially, it shifted the balance of power. Kevin losing Sharina immediately after that ruling became the exclamation point on a story that had dragged on for far too long. It marked the end of an era where Kevin dictated the terms and the beginning of a reality where he had to face life without the safety net he once took for granted. And for everyone watching, this saga is more than gossip. It's a study in consequences, timing, and poetic justice. So if you enjoyed this breakdown, make sure to like the video, subscribe, and stay locked in for more deep dives into the stories shaking the industry.